Today I'm going to modernize a car that forever changed the way we see small Japanese sports cars. A car that looks just as good as it drives and that will go down as one of the most beautiful automobiles ever designed. Today, we're modernizing the 1967 Toyota 2000 GT. What would it look like if built today? Before we go into the design work, I want to give you a bit of a backstory as to how and why this piece of art came to be. The Toyota 2000 GT was a limited production front engine, rear wheel drive, two-seat hardtop GT coupe designed by Toyota and built by Yamaha. First displayed to the public at the Tokyo Motor Show in 1965, the 2000 GT was manufactured under contract by Yamaha between 1967 and 1970. It was a halo car for Toyota and it would revolutionize the automotive world's view of Japan. Back then, Toyota was viewed as a bit of a copycat styling-wise, producing reliable, practical, and pretty boring vehicles. By designing this sleek, high-performance fastback, it demonstrated it could produce an exciting sports car to rival the better European brands. Today, the 2000 GT is seen as the first seriously collectible Japanese car and its first supercar. Examples of the 2000 GT have sold at auction for as much as $1.2 million.
At $950,000 sold. Congratulations, well done.
So most of the 2000 GT's design was done by Yamaha, which at the time did a lot of contract work for other Japanese manufacturers. A prototype 2000 GT was built and presented by Yamaha to Nissan at first, but Nissan declined. Although it's pretty interesting to think about, wonder what a 1967 Nissan 2000 GT would have looked like. Maybe similar to a Datsun 240Z? Both the 2000 GT and the Datsun 240Z, in my opinion, are two of the most beautiful cars ever made. And Nissan was already building a very cool small two-door sports car during this time, namely the beautiful Nissan Silvia. Just look at that beautiful line that wraps around the greenhouse of the car from the B-pillar stretching all the way across the top of the front fender and fades out as it comes closer to the corner of the hood. It's just beautiful. But since Nissan declined this proposal from Yamaha, they then proposed this design to Toyota, for whom they also did contract work, then perceived as the most conservative of the Japanese car manufacturers. You could imagine Toyota wouldn't be that interested in this since it was completely out of their comfort zone of what they're used to building. But Toyota understood that they needed to change and improve their image in order to be competitive in the small sports car market in Europe. So thankfully for all of us, Toyota accepted this proposal from Yamaha. However, they weren't a fan of the proposed design Yamaha brought them, so they decided to create one of their own using their in-house design team. Toyota designer Satoru Nozaki was handed the responsibility to sketch up Toyota's first sports car in history. Quite the task. Nozaki was a huge fan of Jaguar and took a lot of inspiration from the Jaguar E-Type while exploring the lines of the soon-to-be 2000 GT. The Toyota 2000 GT was powered by a 2-liter straight-six engine producing 150 horsepower and 129 pound-feet of torque, mated with a 5-speed manual transmission. Toyota claims that this gave the car a top speed of 135 miles per hour or 217 kilometers per hour. They only built 351 regular 2000 GTs with a couple of special editions from 1967 to 1970, and the price of the car for the American market was only $6,800. I'm saying only today, but back then this was a lot higher than contemporary Porsches and Jaguar, and even so, Toyota did not make a profit on the 2000 GT. The US received 60 cars, the rest of them were spread out across the world, and 2 convertible 2000 GTs were manufactured within 2 weeks for the James Bond movie You Only Live Twice, starring Sean Connery. And even though the roof was chopped off, it was still difficult for the 6 feet 2 inches tall Connery to fit in the car, and you can see his head sticking out above the windshield in the movie.
Get down!
So how are we going to modernize one of the most beautiful cars of all time? It's quite the task, but what we're going to do here is to, of course, modernize all the graphics. So, for example, we have the front here with all this chrome and all these pieces that feels like they are kind of separate. So graphically, what I want to do is, of course, I want to keep the main graphical feature of the 2000 GT, which are these big headlights in the front right here, but I want to integrate them in a more modern way, and graphically I want to have it look like it's more of one graphical element instead of several different pieces like that. But the overall proportions we're going to keep, and of course we have to change these wheels here, and we have to remove this, and I also want to have this A-pillar be body colored, because that is one of these tiny details that's going to modernize this car. But if this were to be built today, what we need to do with the overall proportions of this car is to bring the body of the car closer to the ground. And I think that is going to be the biggest challenge here, because that's a big part of what makes it a beautiful car, is that it doesn't have anything to kind of build out and bring it down to the ground like this. So if we add that, we need to be very careful with the kind of, we probably have to use a different color, probably black, and then have the rest of the body be red. So visually it doesn't take up too much space, but that's something we have to figure out and experiment with. And this, of course, is the 67 model, which I prefer. Later in 69, they changed the headlights. The headlights became smaller, and the rear indicator, this part right here, became a lot bigger. And this 67 looks, in my opinion, a lot better than the 69. So with that said, let's get to work and let's see how we can modernize this beautiful Toyota 2000 GT. Let's talk about the redesign here and what's going on. You know, when you take a car such as the 2000 GT, there is really not a lot you can do to make it into a more beautiful car, because let's face it, it's already one of the most beautiful cars ever designed in history. So what I want to do is, as I said in the brief, I'm gonna focus on keeping the proportions and bring the car down to the ground by using some subtle features and have some black parts bring the car down visually to the ground, and then focus on the front graphics and how to create something cool and something modern using those pretty unique lights that are a big feature of the 2000 GT, specifically up until 1969, since they changed those, they made them smaller in 1969 and for the 70 model. So we could potentially just have made a light bar that stretches all across the front, but that would take away a lot of the identity of the original 2000 GT. So I want to keep two big round headlights in the front and work around those to implement the graphics in the front as well. The thing I love about the 2000 GT is that the body of the car is pretty much undisturbed. Usually when you have cars like this, you have the headlights sitting almost in the fenders of the car, but here with the 2000 GT, they sit pretty much in the bumper, lower down to the ground that we're used to seeing in designs like this. And what that does, it creates this sculpture looking that doesn't have any big design elements that interrupts the flow of the design, unless of course you pop up the headlights, because that's obviously going to change the shape of the fenders and the hood. Small details that I wanted to add here as well was the side mirrors. So I don't want to add the traditional modern looking side mirrors to this design because it just doesn't suit the style. I want to have these old school round mirrors on the side that just has sticks to the door pretty much, and I want them to be black so they stick out from the red, because they are going to be, if this car was real, I want to have the side mirrors be one of these beautiful details that is part of this modernization of the car. So I want them to stand out and not be red. I want them to be black instead. And of course, all the chrome that's on the car, I want to remove that and If we need to have some trim pieces on the car, I want to have them black, such as the piece around the window, for example. And last but not least, one super important thing about every redesign and modernization, every car in general, to be honest, are the wheels and the stance of the car. So I want to have, these are 1552 style wheels, and I just love the looks of them, and I think they suit this style very well. And of course we need to add some width to the rear tires to make it look planted on the ground. So the baseline is keep the proportions of the car, work on the graphical elements of the car, remove the chrome and replace them with black pieces if needed, bring the car down to the ground and plant it properly with a nice set of tires and wheels. And that's it for this redesign. Thank you so much for staying until the end of this video. That means that you probably enjoyed it, so you might as well give it a thumbs up. And if you are new, subscribe to the channel and browse around the hundreds of redesign that's been done so far on the channel. Thanks again for watching. I'm TheSketchMonkey, and I will see you in the next video.